Hello and welcome back to Modern Jubilees. Today's video we're going to be discussing if the Book of Jubilees is allowed to be studied by Jewish people and people who follow the Bible in general. And the answer to that is definitely yes. There was a question regarding if it was forbidden to study Jubilees, but not only is it not forbidden, but it has classically been studied by Jewish sources, starting with fragments from 15 copies among the Dead Sea Scrolls of Jubilees were found. And so this implies that the Essenes studied Jubilees and were copying it by hand. And so it was a well-known text at that time. The Essenes were, of course, a Jewish sect, and they studied Jubilees. Then we have Yosipon. Yosipon quotes from Jubilees in his writings. Yosipon was a historian, and he's associated with Josephus, but it's a body of writings that are related to Josephus's writings, but they're anonymous. But many people associate it with Josephus. Josephus also alludes to stories that are from Jubilees in his writings. And then there are also the Ethiopian Jews. All of the Ethiopian Jews, the Beta Israel, they studied Jubilees as well. Then in around the year 1000, Saadia Gaon, a very famous rabbi who had a school in Babylon, he studied Jubilees in the original Hebrew. And that is according to Rav Aryeh Kaplan, who is a famous rabbi who lived in the late 1900s. He died in the 1980s, which is also when he published his Living Torah. The Living Torah is an amazing modern English translation of the Torah, the Bible, and it also includes a lot of commentaries, and importantly, it also includes an amazing index in the back of the Torah, very helpful for students of Torah. And Aryeh Kaplan was, of course, a modern rabbi, an Orthodox rabbi from the Bronx originally, and he is a very well-respected rabbi who lived recently, and he included 55 references to Jubilees in his Living Torah translation of the Bible. And then also going back to the year 1870 is when in Vienna we got the Hebrew translation of Jubilees. So this isn't the original Hebrew of the Book of Jubilees, but it's a translation in Vienna from German. Dillman had translated it from the Ethiopic into German, and then Shlomo Rubin translated it from the German into Hebrew, and that's where we have the Hebrew translation that we have today. And so throughout history, we do have rabbis that have studied Jubilees. Not only that, but they considered this, and Aryeh Kaplan writes in the back of his Living Torah all about Jubilees, a very large paragraph about it, and he says about it that it's the most ancient source for the writings of various Midrash books, such as Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, Sefer HaYashar, Bereshit Rabbatai, Midrash Tadshe, and Midrash Vayisa. And Rav Kaplan says that although the work occasionally is at odds with Halakha, which is Jewish law, it's clearly evident that the author was a firm believer in the tradition that would be embodied in the Talmud. He thus holds the strictest views on circumcision, the Shabbat, and belief in immortality. I believe that his reference to something being occasionally at odds with Halakha is related to things that could be mistranslations or lost in translation, as he would have had access only to the translations. But it is also Kaplan who says that Saadia Gaon was using a original Hebrew version of this ancient text, which is right now lost. But as we see, since Rav Kaplan, who was an Orthodox rabbi, gave his stamp of approval that this was at least to be considered a Midrash book, an ancient source for Midrash books that are used till today, that makes Jubilees have at least the status of a Midrash text and one of the highest statuses of a Midrash text. So that would put it along the lines of Genesis Rabbah or Bereshit Rabbah, and that makes it a holy text. It is not recognized if it does originally come from Moses at Mount Sinai with an angel, but all Ethiopian Jews do believe it does. And the Tewahedo Church that has also worked very hard to preserve this text, they have preserved this text best. The Gez copy, the Ethiopic copy of Jubilees, was preserved best, more so even than the Latin version, and of course more than the Hebrew version, which is currently lost, but hopefully will be found, since according to Kaplan, Saadia Gaon was studying this book in the original Hebrew back in the year 1000. And so officially the status of Jubilees has the status of a Midrash book, and I understand how it ended up placed there because it really doesn't fall into any other category. It is such an extraordinarily unique text. Part of what makes this text so unique is that it shares the framing of the Torah. And so how do you really place that? The Torah, the Pentateuch, is entirely unique. In Jewish thought, it is from God, given to Moses at Sinai. It is a holy text. It is encrypted with lots of codes beyond just the gematria and all the terms that are cross-referencing each other throughout the entire Bible, every letter and every word and every phrase and every numerical value. It's an extraordinary text in that sense, and so it really has a unique status, but Jubilees happens to share the framing story with the Pentateuch, the Torah, and so it is a parallel text, which also makes it the perfect cross-reference for the Pentateuch, because here we have a different text that says many of the same stories, but adds certain things, leaves out certain things, so it makes it a perfect cross-reference, but it does share this origin story with the Pentateuch, and that makes it very unique. And the other thing that makes it unique is that it has such a universal focus. For example, chapter 8 and 9, where we learn these boundaries that it's giving, it is such a significant piece of information to have in the world, especially today with all these conflicts. It can solve problems. And so it really is a blessing to have this text. Also, unlike most Midrash books and Midrash texts, it's not just some fragments here and some fragments there, commentary on this quote, commentary on this story of the Pentateuch. No, it is like a Midrash in that it weaves in and out of the story of the Pentateuch, but it is unlike the classic Midrash books in that it is a book within itself. It has 50 chapters, and the 50 chapters mirror the Jubilee theme. And the story is told in terms of Jubilees, which the Pentateuch, the Torah, is not told in that way, meaning we're told in the first Jubilee this happens, in the second Jubilee and the third week this happens. And so if you want to see another video about the calendar of the Book of Jubilees, I will link that here. But that is part of what makes Jubilees so unique, that it goes according to the Jubilees, and there's this hidden secret, beautiful hint. Basically, the book reaches a fullness at the end of the 50th Jubilee, which is when the book is ending and the Israelites are entering the land of Israel. And so there's this beautiful fullness that this angel is telling Moses about and telling Moses to write down this story. And so that's all part of what makes Jubilees so unique. Yes, Jubilees is very kosher, extremely kosher. It is an origin for many of the books of the Midrash, and it counts as an ancient Midrash book at the very least, if not an absolutely accurate account that is coming from the perspective of an angel, which I believe from the research that I did that it absolutely is. I agree with the Ethiopian Jews. I agree with the Ethiopian Christians. I agree with those who have come before me who have revered this book and loved this book. And that's why I took the time to create a modern English translation and bring in commentaries from the classic Pentateuch, places like the Living Torah and the Steinsaltz Torah and Sefaria and other sources in order to create this text that is now reintroduced to the Jewish world. It absolutely is kosher. It is Mehadrin of Mehadrin in my eyes. And so I hope that you will all check it out. Thank you for listening. This is Modern Jubilees, and we will see you next time.